So we are here at the March 13th meeting of the Culver City Democratic Club, and our guest speaker tonight is School Board President Dr. Kelly Kent, talking about her first 100 days. So, Kelly, the floor is yours. Thanks for joining us.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for accommodating my time constraints. Today was wildly busy, and unfortunately I'm missing the Ramadan dinner at the mosque in Culver City tonight as well. But I have Megan Sally Wells seated across from me at this beautiful restaurant. We're at Superba Bread and Food, or Food and Bread in Hollywood. And they're accommodating me, and they allowed me to sit in one special part of the room to give this talk to you because it's very important. So I'm gonna share my screen right away. And actually, let me orient these slides just for 1 second. My plan is to talk for 20 minutes, so I will be kind of running through things quickly and then leave some time for questions. So I hope to have a full 10 minutes for questions. And I apologize for going quickly, but there's a lot to share. Most of it really fun, all of it important. So I'm Dr. Kelly Kent. I'm president of the board in Culver City Unified School District, and it's my colleague and friend's suggestion that I come present my first 100 days in office to you all. I mean, I really am grateful for her guiding me in this way, but it's really important we share this value in that we are so grateful for the Democratic Club in particular for supporting kids and families in Culver City and supporting school board members in particular. And we want to keep you in the loop and make sure that you know what's going on for good or for bad, good, bad, and the ugly. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about that right now. So I'm going to start with what I started with when I first got appointed by my colleagues in December, which is my commitment to spend 60% of our time talking about student achievement. Let me go back because I didn't share sound. So I'm going to show this tiny little video clip. It's like super short of me making this commitment.
Privilege that I will add to the conversation is that in 2019, I stated it at the start, and I tried to be true throughout the year that excellent school boards spend 60% of their time talking about student achievement. I had lunch with our new superintendent in San Francisco, and he can attest the very first thing I said was, when I become president, I am committed to spending 60% of board discussion time talking about student achievement. And so I will be paying attention to that, and I hope to hold us to that pretty firmly. Thank you, Cal.
So I share that with you because I want you to know it's a principle. It's about us being here to do the work for children. We're really not here to do the business of adults, even though we get very distracted by that sometimes. So I want to ask you all to hold me accountable and check in with me about that as well. And then moving on, I want to start with a few wonderful notable occasions. The first being a very recent one with our Tri-City Salt Bus. So this is 3 districts coming together, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Malibu, and Culver City, to share resources to serve students with disabilities. And we had a resource fair just the other day at the middle school campus. And of course, our favorite assembly person was there, Mr. Isaac Bryan, who you see here. And he really just shared a lot of personal story about his family and his priorities about students with disabilities. And we all know that he centers marginalized children. And we just appreciate that he is doing everything he can to pull all the resources within his district to support all of these kids, including those with high needs. So we were very honored to have him. And then the next one is this beautiful change that many of our Dem Club members are intimately involved with and know about. You'll see our very own Dem Club member's mother in this picture. You'll see our very own Pat Levinson in this picture, where we had the Friends of the Sandy Siegel Youth Health Center be taken under the umbrella of the Culver City Ed Foundation. This is a really big deal. The Sandy Siegel Youth Health Center is seated in between the 2 campuses of the middle and high school. It services our kids right there on campus in this super unique, accessible way, both in mental and physical health care. And if we don't have a sustainable way to continue to fundraise for it, we're going to be in trouble and our kids will suffer. So we're really grateful to the Ed Foundation for taking that on. We also celebrated 60 years of being sister cities with Uruapan. And so we had our 60th twinning anniversary. In 2019, I had the honor of representing Culver City Unified School District as president then, traveling as a delegate to Utawapan. And so ever since that time, whenever they visit, it's been a great pleasure. And they most recently visited to celebrate their 60th. You'll see our new superintendent, Dr. Brian Lucas, on the left there, meeting the mayor of Utawapan. And we're in Culver City foyer, the chambers foyer there together, because of course the city did a proclamation and some gift exchanges. And then just some specific board accomplishments of the past period. We are in a time, so don't worry about the text right now. Just listen to me for a couple of minutes and I'll talk you through it. And by the way, please email me for details. So, because I'm going to be rushing through things. I have all of specifics if you want any of the details here. But we are at a fiscal cliff. So I think you know that that's happening in a lot of areas in public sector, but it is especially happening in public education, where our one-time COVID funds are sunsetting. And so we have to make $6 million in cuts from our budget. So we got a big injection of funds from the federal government to help us close the gaps of learning loss from school closures from COVID, as well as to help with our achievement gaps that already existed. Those are sunsetting. And I do want to really frame the language about this. This is not a right sizing of our budget. I want to remind everyone public education is chronically underfunded, and we got more reasonable funding for a very short period from this COVID one-time source of funding. And now we're having to go back to that very, very dire situation. So we did have to cut $6 million from our budget, $3 million from internal programs and people, and $3 million from contracts and external relationships and supplies and stuff. And that was a fiscal stabilization plan that the board adopted that is very important, because our first interim budget, which is not depicted here, but was passed a couple of months ago, was passed as qualified. And if you look on the right side of the screen, you'll see that there are 3 categories, and our first interim passed as qualified, which is not as strong as what we just passed last night, which is our second interim, and we passed with a positive certification. This is of critical importance, even though it's very much in the weeds, because if we don't remain in good standing fiscally, we will lose local control and the school board will not have power. So we did have to make these cuts. We will talk more about what those look like in detail moving forward, but it put us back into a positive certification. So I feel strong, positively about that. I'm very excited about some new courses we're approving. They very much align with the board's vision that I think you all are familiar with, primarily around equity and social justice. We have statistics for social justice, environmental design for social justice, a couple other courses there, child development and architecture. We're just growing our career tracks, and we're making sure that we're really aligned with our social justice vision. And this is part and parcel of our increases in ethnic studies curriculum, ethnic literature curriculum, for which we're getting recognized by the state again and again. We also have we're one of the very few districts in the whole nation piloting the new AP African American Studies curriculum. We also have some cool things here where we approved a contract with PK. So this is Parent Institute for Quality Training. And what this is doing, and starting at La Bayana, is it's providing engagement with parents of English learners. And the idea is to empower them to be able to navigate this system, being the caregiver of an English learner. And that may not be very straightforward, and there may not be a built-in understanding of how to do that navigating and advocacy for your child. And we know that parent involvement is a critical predictor of good outcomes. So we're really excited about that contract. On the right-hand side, again, don't worry about reading any text or anything. I'll just let you know that we're very serious about looking at data. Again, good, bad, and ugly. And so sometimes we have data we're really proud of, and sometimes we have data that we need to look at as a growth area, including for English learners, first and foremost, and also for our African American and Black students. And so that's the data that we're showing on the right, looking at a number of different markers for them as we're building this data set toward adopting our Black student achievement plan, which is something in progress that we're all working very hard on. And then I'm just going to give you an overview of my personal as board president commitments, and I'm going to run through each of these pretty quickly. New superintendent support, proactive and corrective communication, agenda setting, also communications, but specifically about board roles. Si se puede, which you all are familiar with, and I'll remind you about sustainability, Baldwin Hills Community Advisory Panel, and Unions and Social Justice. That union is supposed to have a MS in it. So the first piece is supporting our superintendent. So he's brand new, and it was really important for me to be sort of a right hand person to support our superintendent at this time, because he's never been superintendent before, and he came right in, and we had a bunch of crises. We had flooding, we've had POTUS visit, which is not a crisis per se, but he just needs support. He needs to know best practices. He needs the institutional knowledge. He needs that built-in infrastructure support. And I don't know if you all know, but I'm in my 9th year and also my final year. And so I'm in a good position to do that. And one of these days that was meant to be very, very joyful, unfortunately came with some negatives to it. So this was Rainbow Day at La Bayona, and you see all the kids wearing their rainbow colors spread out on the blacktop, and you see a facilitator there in the middle. And this was a day where we really wanted to embrace the diversity, the wholeness of every individual and their family at the school sites and in communities. And specifically, you know, speaking about our LGBTQ students, our LGBTQ families, our teachers, our staff, we brought in this facilitator to talk about very developmentally appropriate curriculum around this, and then also to give professional development to the teachers. Some parents did have some reservations, and they did call some of those groups that end up coming and protesting at sites. And so, like, you might think of Moms for Liberty. We didn't have that group, but our equivalent is called Mom Army. And so Mom Army was going to show up and protest this. So we had to really figure out, how are we going to make sure the kids still have a really joyful day, protect their entry to have to get in the building, so on and so forth, right? We did hear that news outlets were coming. Indeed, they did. 3 different news outlets came. And so within his first few weeks, Dr. Brian Lucas, our new superintendent, had to be interviewed 3 times in one day and present, you know, the rationale behind a curriculum that he wasn't around when we approved, right? And I also just want to point to the elected members, our elected representatives who are pictured here. It's just a fraction of who showed up that day, but the community totally rallied, showed up, made safe passage for our students, and we're so grateful. He appeared on Fox, Univision, and at least one other outlet that day. Another piece of supporting him has been around this proactive and corrective communication. So I've heard from the community, and I know it's a growth area. The district isn't always great at communicating, and sometimes the narratives that are wrong get out in front of us, and we're trying to kind of rein that in and do a better job. We did have an audit recently that was found to have some deficiencies as well as some non-compliance issues, and there were some fees associated with that. And so the community, rightfully so, kind of grabbed on, and then it went into the social media space and took on a spin where there was like some erroneous information, misinformation, like it got exaggerated. And so I worked really intimately with the new superintendent to develop a budget message along with our comms team, which includes Joanna Brody, to really just write to the information, correct it, make sure everybody understands. We did have some audit findings, and here's what they are factually, here's what the fines are, and here's why it's an opportunity for us to make some remedies and some improvements. And so that was a very important support I was able to provide. I've also been focusing on setting the agenda in a very intentional manner. And the way that we have done this in the district historically is that the vice president, who is Tristan Ezador, our club member, sits in with the president and does training for a whole year at agenda setting with the superintendent. So soup president and vice president are sitting in the same meeting, and the president and the soup are setting the agenda. And that way it gets the vice president ready to do their very next job, which is presidency. It's why vice president is best suited to move into the presidency role. So that's been a practice that I've been really excited to be doing every 2 weeks with Tristan. And I've also been meeting every 2 weeks with our student board members. So we have a policy, I'm not sure if the Dem Club knows this, where we have preferential voting rights for our student board members, which is a big deal. And we're doing better and better about really incorporating their voice into our decision making. So I just have a very tiny snippet here of them extending a preferential vote for us.
I vote aye on agenda item 16.9.
And it's just a student board member whose name is Amarachi Ajay giving us a preferential vote and saying, I vote in favor of this item. So we really appreciate that. Another piece is another communication aspect, which is, you know, a big part of what the board president is supposed to be directing, but specifically around PTAs and social media. because I think there's still a lack of understanding about what the board does. And so we're really trying to hammer it home. Like, what are we doing in these board meetings? People don't want to come. They're not that fun. They're long. They're often toxic. Well, how can we get that information out to them? So we're printing these. I mean, we're preparing these little PDFs that are being sent out to PTAs in their newsletter, and they're appearing in social media. So you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Culver City Unified to find those. And then a very, very important development over the past 6 months has been that our former board president, Paula Amazola, of course, Dem Club member, my colleague and friend, initiated the inaugural Si Se Puede event, which the Dem Club is going to help us support next year. And so I'm excited to take on that mantle. And as part of that, we were awarded $5,000 by Amazon to give as scholarships to Latinx students. So 5 students are now in the period where they've turned in their applications, and we're going to be reviewing those applications to figure out which students will be awarded $1,000 each to use toward college. And this is me and my friend and colleague on the right, and don't ask me what's in those glasses. And our sustainability work. Of course, I think I've been fighting this battle since before I was elected. It is still a battle. We still do have a full-time board-approved sustainability position that has not been filled. And so we will continue, and I will continue to fight that battle. On the left, I'll just show you that I had our interim superintendent, Dr. Poulin, write a recommendation letter for Lila Brigard, a student who then subsequently got appointed to the Culver City Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee in the January council meeting. And on the right, I'll just point you to the blue underlined text. I made sure that in the ballot measure, Measure E that just passed, which of course I'll talk about in a moment, has language in the ballot measure that everybody approved that says facilitate energy savings and environmental sustainability. So those funds can hire this position. So even at a time of fiscal cuts, because let me tell you, this could save a minimum of $5 million from our general fund. If we hire this position out of this bond measure funding, it will enhance our general fund and allow us to give those raises to the teachers that they would like to get. I've also been on the Baldwin Hills CAP, the community advisory panel, as long as I've been in office, and I've been serving on their CHAP more recently, which is a health advisory panel, because they, in partnership, the county and the CAP and UCLA are the partners conducting a health study to determine if there are any impacts, negative or otherwise health impacts from living in an urban area that has active oil well drilling. So on the right, you can just see that that's the little population map of who we've heard from, who's responded to the survey and who's given biometric data in and around, around the oil field. I also am part of Local Progress. I think some of you are familiar because, of course, Megan Sally Wells was a founding board member of Local Progress. And then I have been on the board of Local Progress more recently. And in October, I went with them. I was invited to be part of a group that went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to learn about what safe schools looks like to people in Milwaukee. And they do not have SROs in their schools. And they do put their money towards trauma-informed care. SROs are security resource officers, safety resource officers. They put their money toward trauma-informed care, counseling, mental health services, and restorative practices. And so they invited out electeds and a staff member to come take a look at these best practices. And what I left with from that program and what I've been implementing as board president is giving this book, Teacher Unions and Social Justice, to our CCFT members, our Culver City Federation of Teacher members, to build this culture of where people on the ground can embody this vision of social justice from the ground up. And so that it's coming in both directions, from the board and from the staff and the teachers. And of course, we did it, y'all. Measure E passed, almost 62%. We're so excited. I have to thank Mila Moraga Holtz and Meredith Johnson, the campaign co-committee chairs. They just did, they did the Lord's work. And then I also want to, acknowledge that in concert with Dr. Lucas and Dr. Poulin, our interim superintendent, the board did a ton of engagement with staff and families all over the district to find out what the greatest facilities needs were. And then I really need to thank these 4 people. The interim superintendent who has now left, but Dr. Poulin really shepherded this. We thank you, the Democratic Club, for your endorsement and your support. It goes such a long way. You got us over the finish line. I need to thank our Vice Mayor, Dan O'Brien, for supporting Measure E, and of course, our very beloved Mr. Freddie Buxa, our council member, who supported the measure. And I was able to talk about our win of $358 million to our facilities fund at the Screenland 5K, our beautiful community event this past Sunday up on stage as board president. And I just want to show this picture to show you all the little mascots that appeared, our Farragut Foxes, our La Bayona Lions, our Lindhouse Sea Dragons that you can see there in blue. And there's a dolphin way in the back for El Marino, and our fifth elementary school doesn't seem to be pictured, but it was a really fun community event where I was able to celebrate that win and express more gratitude. And I will end here by just sharing with you that if you haven't seen Mamma Mia at Robert Frost, it was very hard for me not to include other student performances and pieces of incredible work, but I'll just please ask you to go to the Robert Frost this coming Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mamma Mia is still playing, and it was outstandingly good. And I have one last story that is personal. My 12-year-old son, his name is Bruce, he's in 7th grade at the middle school. He's in choir. We had a winter concert in February. 1,200 seats were filled in the Robert Frost Auditorium, plus standing. And he had not told Hector and I, his father, that he was going to sing the solo in the finale. So we had no idea when he got onto stage and just blew us away. And so I'm going to share with you just the littlest sweet voice of his right now.
Ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall, no one would hear.
I thank you. Here for you.
Thanks. So we have 7 minutes for questions. I see Tom or Ronnie are up first. And then anyone else who would like to try to squeeze in a question, please raise your Zoom hand and I'll call on you. So Tom or Ronnie, please go ahead.
About 25 years ago, Secretary William Bennett took civics classes out of schools. So what I'd like to ask is, do you think our civics classes are adequate? Are they good enough?
And if not, what can we do to improve that situation?
That's it.
You know, it's such a good question. You guys have been asking this for a long time. I appreciate you sticking with that question. The closest thing is that we did get awarded a democracy school recognition at a time, and we have our Vote 16 students who are super duper active in this exact question. They are building the culture, but it's coming from the students. I mean, sometimes that's the way you want it, right? You want it to come from the students, but I do think that one piece, they're really focused on getting the Vote 16 measure back on the ballot this year. So that's going to be their priority. But I do think that things are most sustainably implemented when the students generate them. And so I'm thinking we need to go through these guys, this Vote 16 crew, that's a strong, robust crew. They're out there on the streets every day. And we try to talk to them if they would help us think about how to make moves there.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Haifa?
Congratulations on Bruce. I'm working on some legislation with my chair, Dr. Lee Pressman, and there's a bill I think you might want to pay attention to. It's Senator Josh Becker. He introduced this bill at the state Senate, SB 1374, which basically says that it's a very complicated bill, but they're trying to take the credit from big institutions like the school district if they're using solar, for instance, and then they build them for their electric use. You know, they build them a high bill, I think, and he wants to stop that. I'm not saying it legitimately well, but I think you can look at this bill, and I believe that the high school probably, I mean, most of the bills that the highest cost of the schools is the energy, and so I think it's a good thing for you to look at this bill and maybe support it. And if it comes to this, we can call our senator and tell them to support this bill.
Thank
And I'm
you,
sorry, I
Elsa.
don't remember, I have to remember who our senator is in the state.
Can you just pop the number in the chat for me?
I
and
will,
then I'll make
yeah.
a note. Thank you
I
so
sure
much.
will, thank you.
Thank you, Danny Young.
Hey, this is kind of just throwing this out there. I don't know what the reason is, but I live in Clarkdale, and the La Bayona school like playground and stuff is not available to the residents when school's out, like some of the other schools in the city. And I'm just wondering if there's any specific reason why we can't open those up like on weekends or whatever for kids to play with in the neighborhood. And also regarding La Bayona, it's usually ranked throughout Culver City schools as the lowest in the district. And I'm just curious why and what we need to do to improve that.
Great questions. To the first question, we don't have, it's not a shared use property. So El Marino, Lynn Howe, and El Rincon are shared use with the city. And so they become city parks after school hours. So La Bayona is one of the few ones that it's entirely our property. And I am actually not optimistic that we would be able to get it opened because, as you know, and I think I wish it went this way, but schools are hardening. We're hardening as school shooter incidents happen more and more. And so it's just very unlikely that people are going to support it being open for public use. I also don't know that the school district would have the financial bandwidth because it would require some additional staffing. To the second question, it's a really good point, and I'm so glad you're paying attention. And it's because La Bayona has our biggest proportion of English learners, and we are not serving our English learners even remotely as close to as well as we need to. In fact, our numbers have been getting worse recently. And so that's what's being reflected in those scores. And we need to move on that. And then part of it is that PK contract that I talked about, but that's just a parent engagement piece. We really need to be moving on our English learner master plan. And we are advocating, and in particular, Paula Amazola is doing a great Herculean job of advocating, but the motion has been slow going. It's also low SES. It's the lowest SES. It's the only Title I elementary school we have. So again, same deal. We need to be serving those students better. And I'll just end, when we make the cuts, we need to not cut from La Bayona. They need to keep all their people and all their interventionists and all their MTSS people and all their TOSAs. These are acronyms that are important to me, even if they don't mean a lot to you.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Kelly. Leah, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, Kelly, I thought you might be able to talk about one of the bills that we are presenting today, AB 2441, to decrease law enforcement involvement in student behavioral issues at school. That's it. I don't need the minute.
Yes. So thank you for that. I did notice it and I didn't get a chance to look very much into it, but I do know that I'm going to be supporting it. I am supposed to have the superintendent is also supposed to have further conversation with Lola Small with Cuevas about it, but she wants our support and we want to support her on it. And our data, by the way, in Culver City is not good, where all the interactions with police are disproportionately taking place much more so on our Black and brown students. But I will also let you know that a lot of that data is because the neighbors of the school districts, primarily the main campus on Olinda, are calling the cops on our kids a lot, like when they're getting out of school. So I think kids are like leaving school, you know, like doing the kid thing, and maybe they're on somebody's lawn and then a neighbor calls the cops. And so we've got all this bad data of interactions with CCPD that's disproportional according to race and ethnicity and gender. So I expect that I will be supporting that bill. I'm going to look a lot further into it, and hopefully we can add some nuance to it that would support the unique needs of Culver City. Thanks for that.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thanks to everyone for questions. And it's 7:30 right on the nose, so we can let you go and rejoin your group. And please say hi to everybody, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for everything.
Thanks for accommodating me. It's great to see you all.